Perfect. And thank you, Graham. That was a great introduction into the next piece around disruption in pet insurance. I'm just going to be joined as well by David Prien from First. Hi, David. So we're just going to do a quick session just looking at what Covéa has done with FirstVet, what FirstVet is doing in terms of disruption in the pet insurance space, and really where's the opportunity to look at insurance differently and do things differently. So I'm Tracey Smith. I am head of Insuretech and Fintech at Covéa. So my job really is around looking about innovation in insurance. What's the future of insurance? And what does that mean? What does the customer today want? What does the customer tomorrow want? And how does Covéa be a part of it? So how can we work with the innovation that's going outside and partner with companies like FirstVet? So I joined literally just as we went into lockdown, so about 6 months ago. One of the first projects I worked on actually was looking at FirstVet. So FirstVet is a online veterinary company. And what we've done is said, actually, the challenge with COVID was that all of our customers couldn't get to the vet. So what could we do differently to enable them to use an online solution instead of going to the vet? And that was really the starting point. So we did a pilot with FirstVet. So all of our customers of all of our partner brands have access to FirstVet in their first instance, so they can use that online vet instead of going to the physical vet. And since we've done the pilot, we've now made it a permanent offer. So I'll just pass over to David, the CEO of FirstVet, just to introduce himself.
Thanks. A nice intro by both Graham and you. No pressure. So my name's David. I'm one of 4 founders of FirstVet, and my title is CEO. I've historically been heading up many of the particularly insurance partnerships, because it's been something that's been growing for us over time. Because I know that we're going to talk about it, but it wasn't actually how we went to market, but a need that we fairly quickly upon launching the service identified, and have been working with since. And my background, most vets think that I'm a vet, but I'm absolutely not. We've been involved within this space for the last 12 years now, and everything basically got started with a bunch of content-driven websites where pet owners could post text questions for free to our then 14 vets at that time. And since then, it's been like an ecosystem of services that's been growing around that. Some of the things have been falling to pieces, and many of the things have been performing really well. So I'm happy to be involved in this super exciting space, actually.
Perfect. So I think that pretty much links into the first question that I had around how you set up FirstVet. But I guess what's more interesting for this audience is, when is it that you realized that you needed to work with insurers, and what did you do to sort of make that happen?
Yeah, so these content-driven websites basically gave us a first-hand, first row seat to the market changes taking place over the last 10 years. And they've been particularly driven by the changes in veterinary practices. And it's been really interesting to see how that has affected the underlying consumer behavior step by step. Because what that basically has built is the need for pet insurance at a much bigger scale. You can see that pet insurance penetration has been growing across markets over the last 20 years, 5 years, and it's a change very much happening right now. What that did was basically that it incurred a sort of polarization in pet owner behavior, where we could identify that insured pet owners who did not have to bear the full cost of veterinary visits had a tendency to start visiting vets all the time for everything, driven by the underlying humanization of pets, while uninsured pet owners were increasingly reluctant to visit vets at an earlier convenience, basically driven by the costs associated of such a visit. And that felt really unfortunate from sort of an animal welfare perspective. So we started identifying how to better deliver the service, landed in the service delivery that we have as of today and are currently developing with sort of adjacencies as well, which is super exciting. And went to market in Sweden, which is a super particular market, because insurance penetration in Sweden is close to 90%, while for dogs in the UK, for example, it's closer to 40%. And we went to market with a B2C strategy, so people paid out of pocket per consultation that they had. And when we started delivering this service at scale, we started noticing that we could really do something else if we partnered up with the insurance companies. And at the same time, they started reaching out to us to explore different collaborative opportunities. We've been through a few different phases, which I think has been really, really productive and good for us, because it's allowed us to sort of land in our value prop, the claim savings, the sort of joint value prop as part of an insurance proposition as well, step by step in a really, really nice way. As of today, with the type of partnership that we have, for example, we're included towards all policies through your, for example, partnership brands, and we're sort of encouraged to be the first point of touch, because it really makes a ton of sense for all involved parties to have an independent mid layer, sort of a triaging layer in the middle, because it's never worked like that. And with the sort of structure that the pet insurers typically have, it's a very reactive insurance type, right? Historically, at least. And I think what Graham mentioned was like, there's so much to be done with different parts of the ecosystem in order to move that reactiveness to a proactiveness. And I think that we're a really sort of nice first step in that value chain change, sort of allowing you as insurers to more take control of the data flow and customer flow as part of the insurance product, while just delivering a far superior product, I think, to the end customer, which they want to use first in order to feel sure that they're making the right choice for their pets. So it's a real win-win situation, and that what makes it like, so nice. It makes me feel so nice to work with this, because like it's beneficial for every single party involved in the value chain, which feels important basically from a long-term perspective. Jesus Christ, I talk a lot. Sorry.
That's okay. And how have you found innovating with insurers in the Nordics, and how do you see that developing in the UK?
Yeah, so strangely enough, or funny enough, the insurance products in the Nordics are not, more innovative than the UK one, for example. It's just that the insurance structure, looking back at it, has been at a higher penetration rate, meaning that the sort of credit risk bearing structure of the market has been somewhat differently structured historically. And many of the actors have fairly similar challenges and opportunities as the UK ones. It's just that the insurance penetration is at a much higher rate, so we can use them as a bigger force going into the market to test different ideas and see how they work out over time, basically. And I'd say that most of the insurers have really gotten around to the thought of, working more proactively with the different data sources, because there is so much benefit to be gained from that. And step by step, in what I like to describe as a nice way, take control of the customer journey. Because what most of the Swedish actors do, if I crash my car, I call my insurance company, they tell me what to do, like what workshop to visit, what to expect, how much that probably will cost me, what will be the actions, etc., etc. While, for pet insurance, if my dog lying right here starts puking, I have no idea what to do, and I call 10 different practices, and 5 of them might be closed, 4 of them can't accept me because they're full, and the last one has a spot. I go in, pay £1,000, and then I see if my insurance company reimburses me, which, not every single time is being done, right? Because that would be impossible. And it's just, there's so much to be done on the customer journey. And I think that from a sort of market structure perspective, the mandate to do that in Sweden is, it's a bit farther gone than what it is in the UK, mainly driven by the insurance penetration. But the underlying innovativeness has not gotten much further, to tell you the truth. I think you guys actually have a bigger mandate to innovate because of a lower insurance penetration, because that type of innovation will increase the attractiveness of the underlying insurance product, allowing you to sell more, basically, and cover a larger portion of the market. I think it's a question of moving quickly enough with the value prop that the customers actually are asking about, rather than using sort of like an intrinsic motivation in order to sort of, just push solutions to customers, and really sort of digging into the challenges that I with my 2 dogs have every day. Like, how could you improve the life of us? just sort of ease the pains, basically.
Yeah. No, I think so. So for me personally, so I look at innovation and insurtech across all different product areas, but I think pet insurance in particular is a really one of the more exciting areas in terms of what can be done differently. How can you disrupt it? And the main reason for that for me is it's one of the few examples of insurance where pretty much everybody that has it will have to claim at some point. Your pet will get ill. You will need to go to the vet. You will need to experience it. So I think that's really the opportunity to how do you change that experience for the customer? How do you make insurance better? And I think linking to David's point around penetration in the Nordics versus penetration in the UK, penetration in the UK for insurance, for pet insurance, is actually really quite low. How do you find out what it is that's stopping those customers from purchasing pet insurance, and how do you change that story? Is it because of price? How do you make it more cost effective? Is it because of not understanding how the claims process works? So I think pet insurance is a really interesting opportunity, linking to Graham's point around one side, how do you use the data? How do you use the different IoT? How do you use the pet tech? But the other side is, how do you really get to what the customer's looking for? The customer really cares about their pet. How do you then give them the best experience, but at the same time profitably from an insurance perspective, which is one of the big challenges with pet insurance. And I think looking at working with FirstVet, so this was pretty much my first project when I joined Covéa, and I've got a little bit of background working with online vet businesses previously. But in the COVID point, it was very logical. People couldn't get to the vet. But I think there's a bigger piece in that. And I think when you look at it on the face of it, it doesn't seem that disruptive. We're just using an online vet as part of the process. But what's really disruptive is it actually really changes the claims process. So when you're a customer, and for example, if David's dog was just sick, he would then go and book an appointment with FirstVet and get that first appointment and have that chat with the vet and say, you know, what do I need to do? Do I need to go to the do I need to go to a physical vet urgently? Or is there a way I can treat it myself? Or should I wait and see what happens? And he's got that reinsurance straight away. So the experience for the customer is straight away. But the other side of the experience for the customer is this isn't part of their claim. So they don't have to claim for using FirstVet. It's part of their insurance package. And that's a very different experience. I don't have to worry that it's going to affect my claims record, that there's going to be any judgments on it. I'm just using that service to understand, do I need to have the expense and hassle of going to the vet or not? So I think for me, that's linking back to Graham's point around really being disruptive and thinking of insurance in a different way. Although it doesn't seem that disruptive, actually, it's really changing that whole claims process.
And I think that, you know, in relation to our service delivery, it's so easy to think about it like, you know, I get it, it's Skype with vets. How hard can it be? But there's so many data sources coming into it on the back end. And there's so much to be done to change the underlying customer behavior by sort of tapping in to what they otherwise would have done. Because you have to look at these sort of alternatives from an action point perspective, right? You either Google stuff and get really, really worried, or call a practice whose self-interest is to actually get you in through the door in the end. And just being able to navigate that on a fully privatized market, I find really, really interesting, especially working together with an actor such as yourselves, where, you know, there's a bigger structural take to do on it, with the challenges that you guys have with, as you say, like, you know, a fairly low profitability product. There's so much to be done over time, by integrating different data sources and really sort of jumping into the driver's seat rather than sitting in the back seat with the wallet all the time and just paying claims. And it's like, yes, you get money. No, you don't get money. It's really, really interesting. But like, how do you feel that, like, now that you've been with Covéa for the last, what is it, 9 months now since COVID started, basically?
Yeah,
like,
I think 8 months.
Yeah. How, like, how you feel that, like, is that developing as part of the COVID reaction, or how, what is your thoughts so far? Because it feels like, you know, big structural changes are happening in relation to consumer behavior, etc., right?
Yeah, so I think we're at a really interesting point of time, and we're very much in this space of, is this a point of time when we all go back to normal, or is this the point of time and actually that change really continues? And I think for insurtechs and insurance disruption, I think it's a point of time that can really influence what happens in the future. And actually, FirstVet's quite a great example of this, but anything that requires online video, anything that requires you talking to people online. So even one of the things that developed out in America, so Lemonade have developed it and other companies are using it, is around doing online claims and doing a video of your claim process, and then using fraud detection to detect whether that is fraudulent or not. And if you think about that in January, and if I thought about that and I had a claim, in my head I'd be like, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about talking on video. I'm not sure I'd be able to make that video. And I think very similar for our customers with online vet. It's like, oh, I like the idea of not having to go to the vet, but how do I switch the camera on? I have to speak to someone. How are they going to be able to deal with me when they're not physical? And that's a massive change. Everyone now knows you can deal with people and you don't have to be physically there. And so for FirstVet as a great example, if you now know that you can work from home and you can do projects and launch things, you also know that if my pet's sick, a vet online can do. Obviously, there are parts of physical examinations that they can't do, but then there are parts of physical examinations that you can do as well, that they can help you and walk you through. So I think that change to moving away from millennials being digital and to everybody being digital, I think is huge. Everyone can now access different services in different ways, and I think that then gives you this opportunity to say, now we really can look at how we do things differently, how we build things differently, and how that change comes through. So I think we're at a really interesting point in time in terms of disruption of insurance and thinking of different ways of doing it. And some of the stuff that Graham mentioned around online claiming in motor, for example, I think you will see more people be much more comfortable in doing that.
Yeah. I think it's become like, from an insurance perspective, like a forcing factor under building, like creating the right behavior from a long-term perspective, right? I mean, just looking at this event today, we probably wouldn't be sitting here in this type of form if not for COVID, maybe. Or maybe it was planned before, I don't know. But it's changed so many different things, and I can just relate to it from our point of view, service delivery wise. Looking back at these discussions like a year ago, or further than a year ago, like a year and a half ago, people were like, video consultations? I'm not really sure. I like to Skype with my grandmother, but more than that, what good can it actually do? I can call my vet on the phone. I'm not sure. And then, so like, as people got, we have a Swedish expression like forced into the ice. It was like a hockey expression. It was like a trigger point, in the underlying consumer behavior, in the underlying kind of structural behavior. Which is the right thing to do because it's just more efficient, It's the same with video claims for Lemonade in the US, for example. It's been something that they've been doing, but struggled with penetration-wise for some time. It's like now, it's just a really, really easy way to do everything that's needed from the comfort of your own home instead, and then do the things that actually are needed in person when needed. And, with the way that pet insurance, for example, is structured originally, I think that imposes huge potential positive changes over time from a claim rating, like a claim ratio perspective, etc. Just integrating step by step and doing more. Because, FirstVet, I think, is a fantastic solution, obviously a bit subjective, but there's so much to be done in relation to these data sources in order to like allow the pet owner to take charge of the situation that their own pets are experiencing. Because it's impossible to know, like if my dog lying here is starting to puke, like she obviously can't talk, and I'm not able to describe the symptoms that she's experiencing properly. So what's needed in order to sort of bridge that gap of calling my normal vet practice, they tell me to come in, and now having the possibility to do stuff from home instead, I think is kind of amazing. Actually, it saved me at least a few grand over the last year, I think, which is nice for everyone.
So if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We've just got 10 minutes, I think. At the moment in the chat, our CEO, James Reeder, is just saying that he used FirstVet at the weekend, and Molly is doing fine now. So that's all good.
Nice.
But yeah, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Just while we're waiting for questions to come through. So, David, what's your vision for FirstVet in the UK going forward?
I find it a hugely interesting market because we can see the changes that have taken place across the Nordic countries when it comes to consolidation, price development, increase of sophistication when it comes to service delivery in relation to fiscal practices, what that means from an increase in insurance penetration type of perspective as well. At the same time, it's a much more competitive landscape in the UK from an insurer perspective. There are just so many more brands, you know. While in Sweden, there are 7 brands in total. It's a much smaller market in all aspects. But what that kind of gives us, I think, you know, and together with you guys, there's like a huge opportunity to like grow the market together in a much more proactive way. Because coming out of Sweden, we've been more of a solution that's been jacked on in retrospect as part of solution, you know, as part of the insurance product. And like, okay, hey, we see increased claim ratios, increased costs. We need to do something about this. Here comes FirstVet. Let's do this. And it's working tremendously well. But looking at the UK with a much lower insurance penetration, it's like the underlying consumer behavior, the underlying clinic behavior is the same as we've been seeing in Sweden, implying that we should be able to do so much more together in order to grow insurance penetration, you know, jointly, and really, really do it together in a more proactive way, which I'm extremely excited about, almost unreasonably excited about, I think, actually, because we can just ease the customer journey for every pet owner on the market if we do and position this correctly. And we know that this is a super appreciated service delivery. I mean, even CEO validation in this meeting, very nice to get. But you know, it really does benefit everyone. We're able to sell more because of it as well, saving money for everyone involved in the value chain. And I really want to do that together because it's the right thing to do, not just because of the sake of sales and growth, you know. But rather because it's the best thing to do from an animal welfare perspective. It's the best thing to do for a pet owner perspective and the vet perspective as well, because it just increases customer satisfaction along the lines. And just sort of deepening that partnership together with you, I'm extremely excited about that. And testing things with different brands, you know, is nice.
So we've just got a question come in that actually links quite well to that from James. And we've been talking a lot about insurance companies and how they've dealt with innovation and how they've dealt with working with FirstVet. And insurance companies are quite often said to be not that innovative. And I think what you'll find is everyone's trying, whether they're fully delivering, but everyone's trying. But there is another side to this equation, which has come through from James, and is how do you find the reaction from the vets in both the Nordics and also in the UK?
Yeah. So not very different, to tell you the truth. I mean, looking at the underlying dynamics of the veterinary markets per country, they tend to be fairly similar. I mean, like, let's continue with the same example. Like a dog puking in Sweden is the same as a dog puking in the UK, right? And the vet delivery and vet services associated with that, kind of like tapping into the vet cultures, tend to be very similar to each other. Fairly, you know, everyone's a vet because they love animals, right? You know, you don't become a vet for any other reason originally. And that kind of links into the attitude of the vet community from a long-term perspective as well. But it also has meant that people typically are fairly conservative within this market and not willing to move or change. But they're like, you know, slow underlying changes of mom and pop shops starting to deliver more adjacent services, dentistry, you know, really, really closely linked associated services over time. And the reactions as we entered the Swedish market, we were basically the first one to do this, right? Anywhere. And the initial reactions to our service delivery in Sweden was like, holy shit, they're going to steal our customers. They're going to prescribe antibiotics. They're going to do cancer treatment via video. That I was like, no, absolutely not. That's not what we're about. What we're only trying to do is create a natural first point of touch in order to feel like make pet owners feel secure about the choices that they're making. in order to ensure that they end up at the right instance from a value chain perspective at the first visit, rather than having to go in, late on a Friday night for, with James and Molly, for example, ending up costing 10 times more, and maybe for an errand that could be treated the next Monday at at 10th the cost instead, and there were no real shortcuts to sort of mitigating that reaction originally, but we just had to do the right thing and really position us fairly precautiously without disintermediating the vet and pet owner relationship, but rather complementing that with a nice new way to talk with your normal vet, or a really, really competent vet when it's really needed and your normal vet practice is closed, for example. And by doing that correctly in a really long-term way, that kind of spread to the Nordics and allowed us to bring the Nordics to the UK from a sort of vet attitude perspective. So the kind of negative reactions originally were much less in the UK than what we could see in Sweden, because it was a bit more of an established behavior. And I think that when we came to the UK, people started to understand, like, okay, this is happening on the human side. It feels like it's inevitable on the pet side as well, but it feels really dangerous with these actors starting to pop up, prescribing whatever, doing home deliveries or whatever, doing this, really trying to position themselves as kind of like stealing our customers. And we have not been like that. So while kind of resistance towards telemedicine definitely has been there, we have not been seeing that resistance. And I think that's largely due to the fact that we've been extremely diligent in positioning our service in a friendly way to everyone involved, because it's the right thing to do. Because if we do this correctly, that opens up other opportunities in the end to work more, deeply together with you guys, etc. Yeah. So all in all, positive.
Yeah. And I think so. So I'm a little bit more disruptive in my thinking, and in my experience and the challenges. So from a vet perspective, in terms of vets wanting to work with these online type companies, definitely positive reaction there, because obviously it's a better way of working for the vet. It gives them the opportunity to earn extra money. It gives them the opportunity to work from home. So that's really positive. Yeah. I think from a veterinary council and from changing the ways of thinking, and also some of David's approach of talking really, it's not about truly disrupting the veterinary process. I sit a little bit more in the middle in terms of, for example, if I had an infection on my head and I went to a online doctor, I got a prescription, I went to the pharmacy and I had my prescription. For me, it makes no sense that you can't do that with a pet. Like, it just makes no sense to me, because the argument that the pet can't talk, I think, is irrelevant, because it can never talk. So I think there is a bit of changing that mindset to get or more people in the veterinary space to buy into the concept. And that links again to this COVID point of, the reality is people have changed what they believe video can do, and that's for me, that's a huge move. Yeah,
and I don't think there's any doubt that we're getting there. But if we would have started in that end, that would have burnt the bridges within the vet community. So it's all about sort of doing things step by step in a constructive way to have the business, because it's a huge market, but a very small field and a very small community, right? Everyone knows everyone. So if we would have gone to market with that type of strategy, we wouldn't have been successful at all. But we need to get there in the end, because it is the far superior customer journey, right? But it's all about doing it step by step in a constructive way that really provides the right changes for everyone involved, I think.
Okay. And I think we'll just finish on one last question that's come in from Dave. So do you think people are generally aware of the potential veterinary costs of treatment? Or do you think, especially in the UK, people expect it to be cheap because their concept of the NHS, and that then causes challenges?
Yeah. Dave cannot have a pet. No, but it's like, this is a fully privatized market, right? And typically the costs associated with vet visits tend to be really high. And looking at the changes, it's been a gradual shift with price increases of 15-20% on a year-over-year basis, right? So looking 10 years back, and when we had pets when we were kids, I never thought about this stuff. Because the challenges weren't the same. But looking at me visiting a vet, especially doing off hours now, is ooh, this is going to burn. Am I willing to take this risk? Is it really needed for me to go in now, or can I wait until Monday? And I think it's been a real sort of consumer mindset shift over the last 8-10 years of people historically not thinking about that to the same extent, but definitely doing so now, especially with a new type of generation of pet owners, getting into the marketplace now, which I'm sure you've seen as part of the COVID changes as well. Like people are getting dogs as a reaction to COVID, like for company instead of getting kids, etc. It's mainly driven by the humanization of pets. Like on one hand, I think people are more and more aware of the costs associated with vet visits. And on the other hand, people are more willing to bear those costs and pay for that, which, is a dangerous cocktail for you as an insurer as well, right? Because you need to come in at the right instance and make sure that only the right people get to the clinic at the right instance, end up at the right place, and that the right things are done in order to hedge credit risk over time, basically, and make sure that customers are satisfied with the service that you guys are providing as well. So I think short answer, nowadays, yes. Historically, no, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely agreed. And definitely agreed on this new customer piece. All of the new puppies that have been purchased in COVID, how do we access those customers, and how do we tell those customers about insurance?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David. I think that's been really interesting, and I do think that it really is a great opportunity to work together and to look at and working with our partner brands and look at what we can really do in the market and really disrupt pet insurance, because as Graham alluded to as well, I think there's a lot of opportunity to change what pet insurance looks like. So thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions afterwards, please just feel free to pop them through, and I will hand over to Dave.
Thanks, guys.